Greetings, dear Daniyar and audience. Welcome to our webinar. Today, Daniyar Kurmankhojayev will be presenting his research thesis about transport planning and modeling. He is a PhD candidate at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. Title of his PhD thesis is Modeling Mixed Traffic Flow of Connected and Autonomous Vehicles and Human-Driven Vehicles, a Network Equilibrium Approach. Daniyar holds an undergraduate degree at the Satpaev University in Almaty and a master's degree at the Saarland University in Germany. He has a working experience as the computer vision engineer at the VERIGRAM in Almaty and as the head of computing sector at the Center for Multimedia Technologies at KBTU in Almaty. Dear Daniyar, I'm very grateful that you agreed to present us your research thesis. It's a great honor for us. And yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introduction. So today I'm going to talk about the modeling mixed traffic flow of connected and autonomous vehicles and human-driven vehicles using network equilibrium approach. So that presentation is structured as follows. First, I will provide some background information, which is important for understanding the problem. And then I will switch to the research problem itself and the framework which is used for the modeling. So the background information will consist of transportation planning, transportation modeling, and the problem which we are trying to solve, traffic assignment problem. So first I will provide the standard form of traffic assignment, and then we step by step complicate it or consider other aspects of traffic assignment. In other words, traffic assignment is the route choice problem of route choice problem. Then connected and automated vehicles is one of the recent trends, which is also becoming very popular these days. And then we will also discuss the mixed flow of service and human-driven vehicles, which is the phenomenon which is inevitable, right? Okay, let's get started. So here's a brief introduction. So transportation planning. My research is modeling research, and as you can know, or you may know, the transportation modeling is something which is supplementing transportation planning. So why we have to talk about transportation planning as well. Transportation planning is a process of looking at the current state of transport in a region, designing for future transportation needs, and then combining all of these elements with the elements of budgets, goals, and policies. So it provides the information and tools needed to improve the transportation system performance, right? It influences policies, alternative strategies, or priorities for funding allocations. So as you can see in the figure, transportation planning consists of, may depend on many factors, mode of travel, infrastructure, technology, and demand. When I say mode of transport, so here you can see the private cars, bicycles, and public transport as well. And some new trends or technologies such as ride-hailing, car sharing, ride sharing, and etc. The process of transportation planning may consist of developing a vision, as you can see in the figure below, right? Creating goals and objectives, then prioritization of projects, because the resources which we have are scarce, and we have to plan them properly, right? And then allocate the budget. Again. So here's one of the examples. For instance, one can build one wants to build the building, right? Or in this case, let's say residential building, business center, or shopping mall, right? So what can we do? First, we can distinguish three parties. The first party is a businessman who wants to build it, right? Or construction company. So this businessman would hold all the shares, and he or she gets the benefits of using this, or let's say renting this building. So which means his objectives might be increase the revenue which he or she gets from this, right? Another party is customer. If it's a business center or the shopping mall, for instance, for customers, it will be important to it will be important that the building or this center is easily accessible. If it's not, they will not use it, and then demand goes down. Right? Another party is the government. So for the government, it's important that the negative impacts which this center would produce are minimized. For instance, those negative impacts are congestion and some noise, and what else? The air pollution. So their task is to minimize, right, the government. As we can see, the objectives of these three sides are conflicting. They might be conflicting. So the modeling tools might help to plan it properly, so that to see where it's better to place the building. For instance, if you have different locations or points where can this building build, right? So modeling can supplement this decision-making process. When we talk about transportation modeling, we have to also define the transportation system. In this case, it can be defined as follows. It's a system for moving persons or goods consisting of three components. These components are vehicles, which are moving goods or people, a guideway, or in other words, transportation network. Then the operational plan. So it can be the policies or the control plans, like signalizing the network. Those facilities which are included in the transportation system for managing the traffic. Then our problem is considered in the context of user equilibrium, or the equilibrium of supply and demand. Here, the supply part is represented by infrastructure, which includes the network, highways, arterials, local streets, etc., and some supporting elements as well, as it was mentioned before. Then demand side is represented by the vehicles and operators and users, like drivers, passengers, freight, and etc. In this context, the equilibrium is reached when the curves of supply and demand, so these models are represented by the curves, intersect. That's a point of equilibrium. So the task of the transportation model is to forecast future demand, or let's say this is the task also of transportation planner. So the transportation planner wants to estimate what would be the future demand, so that the adequate amount of supply can be provided in future. So usually we consider the 20 plus planning horizon. Right? So one of the models, or let's say the set of models, or sequence of models, I think it's better to say, is 4-step demand model. So which includes trip generation, trip distribution, mode choice, and route choice. So we will consider route choice model most of the time. So let me come to an example which explains those 4 travel demand models. First of all, given some transportation network, let's say this is a study area which was aggregated in this form. Each node here is from 1 to 13, right? So each node represents a small region in the study area. We cannot consider each building separately because also depends on the problem actually. So because it might make the problem unbearably huge. Right? So given these nodes and links, so we want to know first trip generation. We want to know how many trips will be conducted from each zone. So how many trips will be conducted from node 1, 2, and 3, and etc. The trip distribution, which is the second part of the travel demand forecasting model, is trip distribution. So this problem concerns about where exactly the trips go from each zone. So this is origin destination matrix estimation. For instance, in this example, there are 4 origin destination matrices, like 2 origins and 2 destinations. See, and we have the demand. So actually, the OD matrix looks like this. Then the third problem concerns about the mode choice. Mode is about what type of vehicles will be used, or what type of movement will be used to go from point A to point B. So in this example, 4 types of modes are shown: bicycles, transit, private car, and walking. And the final stage is traffic assignment by itself. This is the main concern with this presentation today. So what is traffic assignment? This is actually allocation of flow to different routes. As we can see, for instance, if we traverse from origin 1 to destination 2, right? There are multiple ways how we can go from these 2 nodes, from 1 to 2. For instance, we can traverse link 1, then go to 5, 7, 9, 11. Or from 1, we can go also using link 2, 18, 11, and we can get to 2. You see, there are many routes, and how the origin destination flow of origin destination demand will be allocated or split among these routes is exactly the problem we are trying to solve. A more formal definition can be given as follows. So this is a standard way of defining the traffic assignment. I'm not showing the formulation. This is just the definition of the problem. So model inputs, road transport network. So given the road transport network, origin destination tables, link travel cost functions. So I forgot to mention that with each link, we are considering the problem or congested problem. Right? So with each link, we have a function which defines the influence of flow on the travel cost, right? Meaning that higher the flow on a link, higher the travel cost on a particular link, right? So why we are saying that 0.3 link travel cost functions. So we have to also define these functions. And then finally, route choice principle. So given these 4 inputs, the objective of the problem is to estimate flow and travel cost as well through each component of the network. So let me elaborate a little bit on route choice principles. So there are 4 known assignment principles. deterministic user equilibrium, which was proposed by Wardrop in 1952. Then deterministic stochastic, deterministic system optimal, stochastic user equilibrium, and stochastic system optimal. So what are the differences between these principles? First of all, the first principle, deterministic user equilibrium, assumes that the drivers are selfish. They try to minimize their travel time. Then they have a perfect perception of travel cost, meaning that they choose the routes which have the least travel cost. And then the third assumption is that all the drivers are identically rational, so meaning that they behave similarly. In contrast to deterministic user equilibrium, DSO is a centralized principle, meaning that the drivers are managed by a central system. And the problem or the model tries to minimize the total travel cost of the system, not of the individual driver, but of the transportation system. Two other route choice principles. There are extensions of the first two. Stochastic user equilibrium relaxes the assumption of the perfect knowledge of travel cost. So in this case, all the travelers have imperfect knowledge of travel cost. Right? Why it's important? Because in reality or in practice, no one knows the exact travel time of the links or of the routes, and so why there's some uncertainty exists. So stochastic user equilibrium uses the notion of random travel error. So depending on the distribution of this random error, different route choice models are defined. So let's consider this more in detail. Right? So here's some basic extensions of traffic assignment problem. So we talked about route choice principles before. So we mentioned stochastic system optimal and user equilibrium. Then we said what is deterministic user equilibrium, and also briefly discussed what is stochastic user equilibrium. And then I also mentioned that depending on the distribution of random error, we can define different route choice principles, route choice models. So, there are two classes: non-closed form probability and closed form probability models. So, and mostly we'll talk about this type, closed form probability route choice models. So they include logic-based models. They need assumption of, they make an assumption though that this error has independent and identically distributed Gumbel random variables, right? And then the second part is weighted-based models. In contrast to these type of models, they can relax the problem of identically distributed models. Identically distributed errors, meaning that different routes, depending on the distance or length, might have different errors. I also forgot to mention that MNL or multinomial logic is the simplest model, and the rest of the models are the extensions of the MNL model. They relax the assumption of independence. In the traffic assignment context, independence means that the routes do not overlap. However, this is not the case in the reality. So let's come back to this example. For instance, we again go from origin 1 to destination 2. You can find at least 2 routes in this example where the routes overlap. For instance, this route going through link 1, 5, 7, 9, and 11. See? And then another route would be the one which goes through 2, 17, then 7, 9, 11. You see, these routes overlap in the links 7, 9, and 11, which means these routes are not independent. They actually depend. They have some overlaps. So CNL, PSL, PCL, PS logic, and C logic, they relax this assumption. But there is still a problem of identically distributed. So Weibull-based models, they solve this issue. Another extensions which will be considered in my research are elastic demand, link capacity constraints, and non-separable link travel time, and mixed multi-class flow modeling. So if we talk about elastic demand, in the standard traffic assignment, demand is fixed. So given some demand, what is the distribution of flows among the routes of in each origin destination, right? But here, depending on different factors, such as, for instance, level of service, demand might change. Why demand might change? Demand is a function, actually, of the level of service, meaning that if the network is too congested, some travelers might decide shift their travel time, or use different mode of travel, or just cancel their trips. Right? So this affects the demand. So why modeling the elastic demand is an important criteria for traffic assignment problems to make it a little bit more realistic. So another assumption which can be relaxed is link capacity constants. Before I mentioned link travel time functions. Right? Those link travel time functions in the simplest form, they do not have this constraint. So this constraint means that each link has its physical capacity. If the capacity is reached, no more flow can be allocated to this link. So in other words, those the flow which is not allocated has to either change the route or wait, right? Before, if in the standard traffic assignment we have just travel time, if we can also consider capacity constraints, we also have to consider the queuing time. So this is depicted in this figure. So when we talk about mixed flow or multi-class flow, so we have to also consider the link travel time as non-separable link travel time. Right? In this context, this means that the travel time or link travel time is a function of multiple flows, not only on this link. So which means, so I'll take it back. So there are two cases. If you consider the interaction between routes, right, different routes or different link travel time. For instance, given two adjacent links. So here it means that link travel time on one link may depend on the flow on the adjacent link, right? In the context of multi-class flow, so we have, if they share the same facility or the same link, they might influence each other, right? Because the flow is mixed. There is no way to avoid the interaction between these two types of vehicles. Therefore, link travel time will be a function of, like, at least if we consider two classes of two variables, like in the context of connected and autonomous vehicles and human-driven vehicles, we would have two variables. So TA would be the function of two variables. Well, this actually gives the background which I wanted to give. Right? Now let's shift to autonomous vehicles and the problem itself. Let me define the autonomous vehicles first, and then shift to the problem of traffic assignment of mixed flow. What is AV? We use the abbreviation AV for autonomous vehicles. It's a vehicle embedded with multiple sensors which allow them to acquire data and preprocess it, which preprocessing gives the information on spatial localization, and it allows to avoid obstacles and then choose the route. This is depicted on the slide. Then we consider different levels of automatization, but in the context of my research, I will consider the automation level of 4 and 5 if you follow the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration document. Right. So what is 4 and 5 automation level? So a vehicle can drive by itself, almost no interaction of engagement of the driver is needed in this case. Right? This is a full automation level. According to a few studies, for instance, for Bertoncello and V 2015, in this study they claim that by 2050, automated vehicles become a new norm. Right? Meaning that they will take we will use them as normal cars. So what are the benefits of using AVs? Again, according to the same study, AVs will reduce the travel time for drivers for 15 minutes per day, then reduce parking space by billions of square meters, and reduce the crashes by 90%. This is the rough estimation. And another benefit, in this case, in the economic impact. So if you look at the table, you can see that the benefits or economic impact is measured in billions, in the order of billions of US dollars. So the information is, the data is taken from Montgomery 2018. So from the point of view of mobility, the impact on the transportation system, autonomous vehicles may reduce or reduce the headway between the cars. Headway is the distance between following cars. So reducing the headway means increase the capacity. So if you look at the slide or in the figure, you can see that the normal flow of human-driven vehicles, the headways are relatively high. Then if you consider the mixed flow of CAVs and HDVs, then we see that the capacity increases by 50%. Again, I used the data from this study, Grosjean et al. 2018. And then if we completely shift to the mixed flow, to the CAVs, then the increase of the capacity will be 3.2 times, right? So we talked about AVs, so autonomous vehicles, but now we added the term connected. What is the difference between connected autonomous vehicles and AVs? So the difference is that CAVs can interact with each other and also with the environment. And the information which they can acquire by this kind of interaction are speed, location, direction of travel, braking, loss of stability, um, and from the facility or the yes, from the facility they can get traffic congestions, construction sites, road conditions, parking zones, which makes these kind of vehicles more state aware, the network state aware, right? And the benefits which it gives are first again the benefits which come from the AVs. So increased road safety, then shortened headways because there are no drivers and the cars might follow some predefined headways, which is safe for them for their response time. And then because I mentioned before that we are considering the automation level of 4 and 5, so drivers do not have to drive. So the value of time may be reduced as well for those kind of users, meaning that in the car they can read or they can work, they can sleep. Right? So it makes this is a benefits which can be considered or associated with the CAVs. Again, as it was mentioned before, CAVs might become a new norm by 2050, which means that by a few decades at least, we have to observe, we cannot avoid the mixed flow of HDVs and CAVs, as it's shown here. So we have a mixed flow of normal cars and the CAVs. There are different headways. As it was mentioned before, we can consider different types of vehicles. This is different classes, different headways. The minimum or the smallest headway is between CAVs, and the highest is between the normal cars or HDVs. And the framework which we will use looks like shown in the figure. We have two flows, or flow of two types, CAVs and HDVs. For each of these vehicles, we have to consider different root choice principles and the root choice models, which come from the root choice principles, chosen root choice principles. Why it's important? So, as it was mentioned before, CAVs might have completely different behavior from HDVs. Right? Therefore, it's important to see to distinguish between these two flows, types of flows. And then, since we are considering the mixed flow, we have to consider the interaction between these flows, and link travel time functions has to be reconsidered here so that they depict the interaction. And then in the end, it gives us multi-class traffic assignment model of a mixed flow. Here's the properties of two types of flows. Two alternatives for each of them. For instance, for CAVs, they can be either uncontrolled or controlled by central agent. So this is the user equilibrium, also ASIC user equilibrium, uncontrolled, right? Or controlled, meaning that this is SO, so system optimal. It depends on the project or how we define the problem. Then what we would have is lower value of time compared to HDVs. Then better situational awareness, as we mentioned before, they're connected, so more information is provided to these kind of vehicles. so their decision might be different. If you talk about human-driven vehicles, they are uncontrolled by a central agent because they're selfish. They want to reduce their fuel time. They have higher value of time compared to CAVs. And then they have imperfect situational awareness. The literature review shows that there are multiple studies conducted related to this topic. They consider different root choice principles and root choice models for each class. For instance, Chen et al. Considered deterministic physical equilibrium for both. Banglowy et al. 2017 considered deterministic physical equilibrium and DSO, deterministic system optimum. One of the most recent studies were made by Wang et al. They used CNL, cross-nested logic stochastic physical equilibrium model to model the HDVs and deterministic physical equilibrium for CAVs. And we follow this approach, but with different models. So here's our framework, more detailed. So proposed modifications, and these modifications, they consider, again, mixed CAV-HDV flow. Here we look at selfish drivers with some perception error in order to overcome the issues related to MNL or multinomial logic and the advanced models based on the multinomial, based on logic. We consider Y-bit model, Y-bit based model. So the problems that will come are independence and identically distributed variable. So we relax these assumptions by using this model. So for HDV, we consider selfish drivers, perception error, and then the same model, but with different dispersion parameter. And then we also model the asymmetric interaction. So this is linked over time. Include link capacity constraints and elastic demand. So that we will have the capacitated double ECW, SUE, MTA, MTA. MTA is abbreviation for multi-class traffic assignment model with elastic demand. So this is a short summary of what we talk about. So we are planning for 20 plus years ahead. Transportation modeling supplements transportation planning, but does not substitute it, it supplements. Traffic assignment problem is an important step of travel demand forecasting. There are multiple extensions of traditional traffic assignment extensions. In a few decades, series may become a new norm, and mixed flow of series and series are inevitable. And then finally, the behavioral aspects of these two vehicle types have to be explicitly modeled. So this was depicted in the this framework, and this will be modeled. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniyar, for your very interesting, I think very beneficial for Kazakhstan and in general to traffic research around the world for your presentation. So I think I will So I will have a question. So for what your research, I understood that the impact of the introduction of the automated vehicles will be useful to the streets of the city by reducing the chance of car crashes, beneficial in terms of time and costs. So in my mind, I associate your research with the Tesla cars. So there happened few cases, I think, in the States where the car which was auto driven had crashed on the road. So does it mean that it's still early to introduce self-driven cars to our streets? You said that it's gonna be normalized in 2050, in 2050. So how do you think the companies will make sure that these cars are safe? Because from your presentation, it seems that it's going to reduce the incidence of car crash on the roads.
Assuming that the technology is ready. If there are some car crashes or accidents on the road, which means the technology is still raw, so it has to be tested or has to be implemented in the controlled environments. Therefore, in the beginning, I mentioned that I assume that the automation level is 4 or 5, level 5 or level 4. So meaning that the technology is ready and we can use it without any fear of being caught in the crash.
Okay.
And those preliminary studies, I don't know, this is just some predictions of forecasts, let's say. And nobody knows. There are a lot of uncertainty related to when it becomes true.
Yeah. Thank you for your answer. So is the development of the automated vehicles is going only in big corporations such as Tesla, or other companies such as Toyota and Nissan are working on this type of cars?
There are many companies which do research in this field. To mention a few of them, this is Tesla, as you mentioned, right? Didi, and there are many companies in the China mainland itself. So Tesla is not the only one. This is the well promoted.
Yeah, they have a good marketing strategies. I see. Wow, that sounds like your research sounds very futuristic in the context of Kazakhstan. Because I don't know, I hope this program, if it reaches Kazakhstan in 2050, will be implemented in a correct way. You know, even now, like we have a serious car incidents on our roads, that when drivers do not follow the rules, you know, the cars are. So I don't know how the process of implementing the automated vehicles in our roads are going to be. So what are your thoughts about it, about your prognosis on Kazakhstan case?
Kazakhstan, I think we have different issues. We have to first implement the common practices and make them work. If they work, then we can start thinking of something new and advanced.
Yes.
There are many policies which just on the paper, right? But nobody follows them. We need different kind of control systems. For instance, Sergey is implementing its cameras, right? So one of the issues they want to solve is whether they get the proper maintenance or not, right? So,
Yes.
or whether they intersect the stop line or not.
Yeah.
So which means we have to increase our awareness, or how to say the thinking of other people, or convenience of other people, their safety concerns as well.
Yes. Did you hear about the incident in Astana yesterday?
What
On
was it?
on the I think on the bridge in Astana in the city center. There was a huge car crash. So young driver, he exceeded the speed. I think it was like 150 or 80, and he went to the opposite side of the street, and he clashed with another car. So I think at least 5 people died. I think it's like few people died and few were injured. So do you think that if he was an automated vehicle, this type of car crashes would have been avoided?
Well, it depends. So, well, if the driver is totally prohibited to drive, right, and then of course those kind of crashes would be eliminated. But if, like in Tesla, they have an option to drive by themselves or let the cruise control to drive, right? Or not cruise control, but the car to drive by itself. If we have that kind of option, then of course we can say nothing. So if a person chooses to drive by himself or herself, then again, the probability of this happening is still zero.
Oh, okay, I see. Thank you. So, does the introduction of the automated vehicles in our streets require any additional adjustments, such as wider roads or maybe construction of new roads, new system roads?
Well, it's a good question. From my point of view, they can be operated as the normal vehicles. The only difference is that they drive by themselves, right? And they can interact with other vehicles and the infrastructure. So infrastructure has to be changed so that there are sensors or some data transmission devices which interact with the cars. From this point of view, the infrastructure is supposed to be changed. But from the point of widening the streets or allocating parking spaces, well, it might remain the same. Another point related to the connected and autonomous vehicles, it might reduce the parking issue. For instance, you drove to your work, to your office, and then went out from the car and then let your car drive back to your home, right? Then there is no a problem of parking for you.
So you suggest that there should be more parking spaces built?
No, I'm not saying that there are more parking spaces supposed to be built. I'm saying that the issue of parking may be reduced, or the congestion due to some improper parking may be reduced in this downtown of the city. As I said, if you drive to the office and then let your car drive back to home and stay there, like park by itself at your home residence, then you don't have to park it in the downtown if you're working in the downtown, of course. From this point of view, the facility might improve by itself if there are only the connected and automated vehicles. All the market penetration is slowly increasing. The market penetration of CAVs.
Okay, thank you very much. And last question I would like to ask, though. So, for example, if I would like to have this kind of car in the future, since I don't have much experience in driving, so I'd be interested in purchasing the automated self-driven car. So do I have to pass the driving lessons? Do I have to have a driving license if I'll not be driving this car?
Of course, you don't have to. You're not driving, right? So you just input the destination.
Okay, so I don't have to have a driving license.
Exactly. So which means even your kids, if you have some, right, can drive the car. You can just see the put the destination and then you're there. Or for instance, it's also good for disabled people or infants. Right?
Wow, that's amazing. But is it like from this point of the state, the government, is it legal not to have, do you think they will introduce the requirement to have at least some kind of, to know some rules of the car in emergency cases, for example, if the system doesn't work, you have to drive yourself, because you still sit on the front seat, right? There should be, I imagine there will be wheel, so.
So this is a good research question, actually. So,
yeah. I think the government should have a thought about it, about driving license.
So far in my research, I assume that those kind of things do not happen. So the vehicle can always drive by itself. Does not need any interaction of drivers. So which means that a person in the car or the passengers, they're just passengers, not the drivers.
Oh yeah, I think that's a good way of saying it. Wow, the driver actually is the car, right?
Yes.
That's actually fascinating. I think it broadened not only my but also listeners' thinking. I have never thought about these future perspectives. Thank you very much for your exciting presentation. So what year are you in when are you completing your PhD?
So I went through 2 years. I have 1 year to go.
Okay.
Working on my thesis.
Okay. Then I wish you the best of luck with your thesis. Yes. So yeah, thank you very much. I'll upload the video on our social media platforms, and such as YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.